Hey guys, welcome to a new class of contemporary Spanish politics. Today we have our last session on the Spanish economy, and we are asking ourselves this question, whether there's a new hope. Actually, when I designed this course at the beginning of, when I redesigned at the beginning of the year, I could have never guessed that this was, obviously that this pandemic was about to happen, and this question actually will have been answered in a different way actually, and that's how we are going to address this class. In the first half of the class, I'm going to talk about whether there was a new hope for the Spanish economy and how was it looking, and in the second half of the class I'm going to talk about the social impact and the economic impact of COVID-19 and this crisis and how is it going to look. So let's get it started. Remember where we left it. We were already coming out of the crisis. The economic policy had worked. The labor market reforms. I mean, more than the economic policy itself, also that the world economy was recovering. By the end of the day, Spain, as we mentioned in the first class when we were talking about economy, we said that our economy is highly dependent on the other countries around us. By the end of the day, one of our main activities is tourism, and obviously tourism relies heavily whatever happens abroad. But yeah, we left it there with the economy recovering, and actually this recovery was confirmed over the period of over time. If we look at in GDP terms, the Spanish economy was still growing to 2019. I mean, actually it was growing faster than other economies in the Eurozone. So actually some of them, Italy or Germany, were flirting kind of with negative numbers. Well, Spain was still growing, which was positive. Obviously, it was decelerating. However, the financial quarter growth was more or less stable from quarter to quarter, and you can see that. These obviously impacted the unemployment figures. We left it at some point over 25% during 2011 and 2012. Actually, this unemployment rate was still decreasing. The last figure we had before the COVID-19 crisis was 13.78, so 13.8 eventually unemployment figure. That was quite good, and the projections we're talking about getting, well, in a 2-year time or so, getting it back to 8%. That 8%, if you recall well, was actually almost the historical minimum for the Spanish economy. So actually the economy was in the right walking in the right direction, so to say. If we talk about another of the variables that we mentioned in the previous class, the risk premium. The risk premium of Spain in the last 2 years was pretty much stable, actually relatively low. I mean, you can see it here as a black line, and actually overperforming. Actually, normally the country that we tend to compare the Spanish economy to is Italy. There's quite a few similarities. We have the territorial differences between north and south. We have also, we rely heavily on tourism. Industry is large in Italy, but by the end of the day, two very similar economies. Also, GDP is not that far away. GDP per capita, obviously, Italy is a bigger country than Spain. But by the end of the day, actually, Spain was overperforming Italy, which was quite a good sign. I mean, by the end of the day, once again, this is the comparison with the German bonds. And last, the forecast, as I was saying before, with unemployment figures was relatively positive. You can see how real GDP developed over time, and actually the forecast was to more or less stay stable around growth of 1.4, 1.5 for the upcoming years. However, this whole situation has change now with COVID-19, as you can imagine. Actually, I pull back this lesson from yesterday, because today actually I'll comment it in the second half of class, but today actually the GDP and the unemployment figures were coming out, and you will see in a few minutes. But actually, if we ask ourselves this question, whether there was a new hope for the Spanish economy or not, there was indeed. Spain was growing as a stable path. There was in terms of public debt, it was not being reduced yet. Deficit was around 2%, which was more or less the target that the European Union had given Spain. And there were reasons to believe that actually there was a new hope also, because the last thing I want to tell you about this is actually relates to inequality, whether we had gone back to the period before the economic crisis or not. And for that, we're going to use Gini, and And in terms of inequality, actually, obviously, during an economic crisis, you have to bear this in mind. And actually, there are people that are more vulnerable than others. And that people that are more vulnerable, that we're going to analyze them later, they're normally related to low-skilled jobs that are being destroyed as soon as the crisis hit. And obviously, this increases the gap between those who have more and those who have less, and increases the inequality in countries. Obviously, for that, you have policies to try to correct that inequality that the market produces. But obviously, the extent of these policies is a certain one. You cannot get too much beyond what the market dictates in that sense. And actually, the inequality in Spain obviously had grown during the economic crisis, but right now we were more or less recovering from this. We were going back to the figures that we had back in 2008. So I mean, but those are far away. I mean, if you this is quite an interesting graph because it kind of put in categories. It puts into stratificates the European countries based on the level of inequality, and you see Northern European countries, continental and Mediterranean, and how that's still a characteristic that it divides Europe still. This being said, the answer of whether there was a new hope, of course, at that time, if you had asked me 2 months ago, the answer will be yes. It will be a solid hope for Spanish economy and things. I mean, even though we still had, I think you also said in English that we had, our feet were made of clay, but the economy was growing. By the end of the day, any economy that is highly relies heavily on service sector and particularly on tourism and these kind of activities, it's weak eventually, but at least we had some room for working out with what the tools that we had at that time. We're going to have a small break right now, and then we're going to be talking about the social impact and the economic impact of COVID-19 in Spain. So see you in a minute.